Hi everyone, it's Megan here. We'll get started very shortly, but if someone could just, or a few of you could just confirm you can hear us okay, by popping it in the chat, and as soon as midday ticks over, we'll get moving through this more sales-oriented webinar.
Awesome, thank you.
Excellent. So it is midday, so let's get going. So for anyone that hasn't spoken to me or heard me before, it's Megan Twentyman, Brand Manager for the Voip Solutions here at SoftSol. And on the line with us is Matt Carey, our Senior Engineer.
Hello.
So Matt's going to walk us through, and I'll jump in and out, around deployment scenarios, how to size opportunities, what things to look for when you're doing that type of scenario. And then at the end, we will have a Q&A. You can just pop the questions in the chat. We will try to monitor them while we're presenting, but it's a little bit hard, as you all know. But we will try and answer all those questions at the end. So thanks for joining us today, and I'll hand over to Matt.
Awesome, thank you, Megan. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. What we've been doing lately is we've been doing small webinars between 10 to 15 minutes and doing a couple a month. This one is probably going to be a little bit longer. Just a little bit of background on this. So Soft Solutions, a big value add that we do is we travel around the country and catch up with people, give the latest updates, solicit feedback and the like. And what I did a little while ago, which proved very popular, was an earlier version of this presentation, which was basically everyone coming together and sort of aimed at newer customers moving into the VoIP space, IT companies that were starting to take on new phone customers. And it's just experienced people. This maybe just be a refresher for newer people to VoIP. This may tick some boxes or light some light bulbs. So let's get into it. So basically what we've got today is just a few consideration, well, when I say a few, there's a fair few, of deploying VoIP, and then some example scenarios. A big question we get, where especially with 3CX, is how does a simultaneous call work? Of course, we don't just offer 3CX, we have Grandstream, Yelling, and the like. So let's have a quick look. So key things to consider, and as old as this joke is, I always say the second fiber goes in, it's a no-brainer for VoIP. You've got chorus that aren't deploying copper anymore, and anywhere where there's decent internet, VoIP is a good solution. A few years back, the state of New Zealand broadband wasn't so fantastic, and there still are challenges, especially further up north in the North Island, and places where power goes out frequently, because of course when your router goes down, then it takes your VoIP system offline. So there's things to consider like a UPS to make everything sure everything is still running. So internet speed is a key one there. Probably take it for granted in the main areas where we have fiber and UFB and the likes. We don't have to necessarily QoS, which is quality of service, tag our traffic to make sure everything works. But that's definitely a key thing. Years and years ago, so I've been with SoftSol for 7.5 years now, working with Megan and VoIP and the like, and we had a lot of interesting challenges for new partners who were deploying VoIP on ADSL lines, for instance. So the state of broadband in New Zealand today is definitely a lot better. Another key thing is network design as well. What is the existing network? What are the challenges with it? Does it support VoIP? Does it have things on the router, for instance, such as SIP ALG, which just mangles VoIP traffic and can make everyone have a real bad time? This key thing with VoIP is making sure the ports on the firewall have been pinholed and forwarded correctly. 3CX, for example, requires full co-NAT, and it has a port range that needs to be defined. Thankfully, with 3CX, we do have the built-in firewall checker to test for that. So very interesting to consider beforehand, before we even get into a new VoIP system, is making sure the network can support it. Is their requirements around multicast. Multicast is the broadcast that phones send out when they're first plugged in. So how are we deploying phones, and so on and so forth. Who is our VoIP provider? So Obviously, in NZ now, we have quite a few partners that are popping up. A lot of them are just wholesaling, which is fine. It's all about getting a cheaper cost to our customer, making sure they've got that return on investment, especially compared to legacy systems. We jest quite a lot when we're on the road, but there's still some of those legacy providers out there which are offering something like 10 extensions for 3 to 4 to 5 grand a month. So it's very easy to get in there and disrupt these geriatric PBX systems. So VoIP providers are a very key consideration. We have a lot in New Zealand. We have interop providers with 3CX as well. Typically, we find that when people move to VoIP, they are saving money, and then depending on how much support they want from their provider, it will be the provider that they choose. So definitely reach out to us if you ever need a recommendation for it. We do have a few partners that we prefer depending on the region and depending on internet speed as well. So another key consideration in here as well is, especially with least cost routing, do we need an FXO or FXS gateway? So we all know there's a lot of acronyms in IT. So FXO is Foreign Exchange Office, which is basically lines coming in for analog. And FXS is Foreign Exchange Subscriber, so that's existing legacy phones. So we see a lot of deployment with VoIP gateways when companies have a provider that maybe has free calling or something for local numbers, and then again that is implemented into, say, a design with 3CX. So pick up someone dialing 7 digits, we know it's probably going to be a local phone number. And seeing a lot of the FXS gateways as well, with the likes of a lot of the old Panasonic gear that's out there, and for people who may potentially struggle if they have a new phone, so it's more of a quality of life thing. And definitely seeing the likes of FXS and things like hotels, where they've had their existing analog copper wiring go in, they don't want to tear up the floor, they don't want to put new cables in, they just don't have the space or the man hours, so they may go to where the existing PBX is sitting, pop in an FXX gateway, and then wire that into a VoIP gateway. PBX, sorry. Another thing to consider as well, and I'm going to keep saying another thing, so I'm sorry if that drills in too hard, is concurrent calls. So this is a challenging one because a lot of the older systems, they're based on, and still are, potentially things like per extension or per line card or per phone. Every different system has a different way of licensing. Our preferred model is the model that 3CX has, which is per simultaneous call. So per simultaneous call doesn't necessarily reflect the amount of extensions that are on a customer site. And people can struggle with the concept. Once they get it, it's really simple. Because we're so used to looking at existing bills, maybe from Spark or Vodafone, any of the big telcos, and it's, you know, per minute, per extension, and it can get quite complicated. So the main thing with 3CX especially is per simultaneous call is basically any established call. So it's a call going between an internal extension and an external extension. It's an external call coming in. It's a person waiting in a queue. So it's basically that, any call that's going in and out of the system. So what a lot of partners are doing these days, we've been seeing it increasingly, especially when I've been out on the road, coming out and seeing you guys, is you get a license, say a 16 simultaneous call, and then once you've acquired that license, maybe then changing it into a per extension billing model or something like that. So there's a lot of ways to do it, and again, reach out to us, we can assist with these things. A lot of people as well say, you know, how many simultaneous calls do I need? Well, it depends on the end user organization, and we'll see a few scenarios in a second. But if you've got something like a call center, then you've probably got a lot of people on the phone, so you're going to need a higher simultaneous call count. If you've got a little SMB office or something like that where barely anyone picks up the phone, then you could probably get away with a smaller license. But an interesting one we had a little while ago is wake-up calls with hotels. They do take a simultaneous call per wake-up call. So if you have a 100-room hotel with a smaller license, then not everybody will be able to utilize a wake-up call because you'll need to allow for having that per phone, for instance. Another big one is call flow design. So my strongest recommendation, both for experienced partners and new partners as well, especially when we're getting into VoIP, is when we switch a end user over from a legacy PBX application, make sure that we sign off on the call flow and that they've signed, well, most importantly, they sign off on the call flow. So once you've deployed a system, they aren't going to say, oh, but it doesn't do X that my old system did. So we want to make sure everybody's on the same page with that. A lot of the legacy systems do have proprietary things that they do. There are a lot of ways to skin that cat with existing VoIP stuff. And again, reach out to us, we can help with that. But the big thing is making sure that both parties agree on how calls are going to both go out and in. It could be things like office hours as well.
I'm just going to jump in there, Matt, as well. Matt mentioned about reaching out to us. Our pre-sales is a free of charge service as part of our value add. So Matt is available, and Matt is probably the key person to have a chat with around call flow design, around scoping an opportunity, because he has been working with us for over 7 years, as he said. He knows the gotchas, and he can also point out any flaws in design that you might have missed. So do feel free to utilize Matt's skills. You can reach out to him via email or phone, and it's definitely something we are really helping a lot of partners with constantly. Matt's getting busier and busier. He's starting to growl at me because I'm making too much work for him, but that's the whole point, and we want to be here to assist you. I can obviously help as well from a brand management perspective, but Matt's got that real technical nitty gritty that is required in that planning stage. And I think it's the old adage of business that planning is the most important thing. So do utilize the skills that we have available to share with you.
Definitely. Thank you for the plug, Megan. Awesome. So other things to consider as well. So when we're putting new phones in, so soft sell, we have various ranges. Megan, you probably want to comment here as well. It's our most popular, probably the Grandstream and the Yelinks.
Yeah, in terms of the hardware, we're still seeing across most deployments some hardware going in. So obviously 3CX has the built-in soft phone, but for whatever reason, people still like a piece of hardware on their desk. So Grandstream is our distributor brand that we've worked with for quite some years and are very confident in the capability of it and excited about the roadmap coming out from Grandstream. Other partners choose Yealink because that's what they've used previously or have a preference for. We can supply that as well. My role as a VoIP brand manager is to make sure that we're making it easy for you, our partners, to access the technology that you need. So if you need headsets, we can get hold of Plantronics and Sennheiser and Jabra, etc. as well. So don't hesitate to reach out to our team. Our internal sales team are great at finding all the little accessories, paging systems, those types of things. So nothing's too difficult for us to assist you with.
Absolutely, and definitely going to plug our soft sell blog as well. We release a couple of articles there a month, and typically I write about new and upcoming interesting VoIP stuff, so I definitely recommend checking that out and turning on notifications as well. We just had a new article go live today around some new SIP paging speakers, which are coming from Grandstream that we expect towards the end of October, and we're very excited to have those in-house. We'll be doing a demo as well, just to check out the new equipment, so it's very cool. Okay, so back to phones. Things to consider. So what are the existing phones that they have? Do they require BLFs? That's busy lamp field. On the side of the phone, does it need to light up? Is it a receptionist? Do they need sidecars or something like that? How many extensions do they need to be able to transfer calls to or see the presence of to see if they're available? Are we using a phone in the first place? As Megan said, we're seeing it's kind of 50-50. Seeing more people slowly move towards a soft phone client and a headset, but again, people still like having the phone on the desk. It's something that they know how to use. It rings, they pick it up, they talk. Fairly simple. Other considerations around a phone: does it require network pass-through? So are we doing things like VLAN tagging? Do we have a limited set of ports? Are we running Ethernet cable to a phone and then passing through to a PC so we can reduce the amount of cabling that's in there? And are we doing smart things like doing power over Ethernet? So most of our range of phones that we offer do support PoE. The smaller, super cost-effective ones, not so much, but all phones come with an AC adapter, especially in the Grandstream range. But we're seeing PoE become more popular. People are injecting voltage at the switch to power phones. We do that internally in-house. It saves a lot on outlet space, so we don't have those big AC adapters hanging about all over the place. And this is especially interesting as well when we consider like the plugged paging speaker, or we also have Wi-Fi access points that Grandstream offer as well, because you can just run an Ethernet cable to power it. You don't actually need to have an electrician involved or anything like that. So it can really simplify deployment and it can make things a lot tidier. So speaking of deployment, planning how to do that as well. Are we doing it in Office? So for instance, you phone up SoftSol and say, hey, Megan and Matt, we have this customer and we need X amount of phones. Where, are we sending that directly to the end user site and then technicians going on site and installing there and then? This has some benefits, of course, because you can have the correct IPs all being assigned. You don't have to mess with doing static DHCP leases and the likes, all that sort of stuff, so it's a little bit easier. Or we say shipping to the reseller and they're setting it up and then basically just carting it across to the end user site? Or are we doing other things like, for instance, with 3CX, it has stun and a session border controller. So are we putting a PBX system in the cloud, for instance, and then hooking up a remote site from there? So there's a lot of ways that can be deployed. Definitely something to consider beforehand. And I know I keep plugging SoftSol, but definitely reach out to us if you have any questions about it. And probably the main note here as well, how will it be supported? So really important, because if something goes wrong at the end user site, they're going to phone you and then you're probably going to phone us. So there's ways that you can package this as well potentially. So definitely something to consider. Speaking of 3CX, we at SoftSol would do first level support for what we can. We can go all the way up to level 2 support as well. Partners of a particular qualification with 3CX can get support directly as well, but we definitely don't mind and do recommend as well reaching out to us in the first instance. As Megan noted, we've been doing this for quite some time. We've seen a lot of the gotchas. I ran 3CX training recently in Palmerston North, and it was really well received. And again, it was just having that value add. Yes, we can assist. We come out and even do things like training you guys as well. So a few.
Absolutely. I'm just going to jump in there as well,
Mhm.
Matt. In terms of that support, just to clarify, the first level support that we offer from Soft Souls is led by Matt, and he's ably assisted by Gerard. That is free of charge. We do not charge for that technical support. We say that we offer the first level support because that's what we do. However, both Matt and Gerard are advanced certified. Matt's got 7 years of experience, and he'll often go way above first level support to support our partners. So all affiliate partners do not have free support from 3CX directly. That's paid tickets, but you can get free support from SoftSol. And in the same, we also see some of our higher end partners who have that direct contact with 3CX that reach out to us first, because we often just know that answer. So don't be afraid. We have a Voip support at softsol.co.nz email address, and we have an SLA of 2 hours on that. So you will hear back from our team, and I check that pretty regularly as well, especially when Matt's out around the country doing the training like he was talking about. So we still provide that service and make sure we meet those SLAs.
Awesome. Okay, so rest of the prezo is a little more lighthearted, but we're going to look at some deployment scenarios here. And apologies if my screen freezes. I'm having the odd technical issue today. So we've got an example here. So We Like Pies Limited is an SMB office, and they have a requirement of 20 phones, and we can see the ones here. So the 3 for reception with BLF and expansion modules. So we may be looking at a Grandstream or something that supports sidecars. 10 for junior staff. Our most popular phone generally is the Grandstream GXB 2135. May have 6 for senior staff, so something more higher end, and the CEO always needs a higher end phone, so something like the the video series that we can offer. Working out a call flow, so what do they want? They've got a basic DDI that's coming into the main line, and then they have DDIs for receptionist, for senior staff and the CEO. So we've got our rough calculation there of how many DDIs they have. So, and I put this half in quotation marks here because it's generally the answer I get when I say how many people on the phone at the same time. Around half. So we know we have 20 staff with 20 phones, half of that would be 10 concurrent calls, and we always recommend putting a buffer on. The reason for this, especially when you're dealing with SMB, they're probably going to be doing things like small conference calls or things like that. And any external participant that's in a conference call counts as a call, so we want to work that out ahead of time. They also have a fax machine because fax won't die, so we need an ATA adapter, probably with an additional DDI to drive that. But typically what I would recommend these days, if they've got a fax machine and a fax line, just leave it. Just leave it as it is. It's an analog technology. It's happy in its own environment, singled out, a lot easier just to leave it in there, keep that line with the telco, and just take the main phone calling over to the PBX system. Another example in SMB, but this is a call center, so we have a higher phone requirement, and we'd work that out depending on what type of phone they need. We've got a fairly basic call flow here with only 12 DDIs, but because so many people are on the phone at the same time, we need to work out that simultaneous call count, and we need to put a buffer in there as well. Just to make sure, again, if there's something like conference calls, or for instance, you could have an IT company and they have maybe typically 10 people on the phone at any one given time. That's fine, but what happens when there's a crisis or something like that? What happens if there's an emergency? What if there's a big exploit that's come out and everyone's being cryptoed left, right, and center? Those phones are going to ring off the hook, and if you have an IT company where an end user can't reach them for support, they're going to switch somewhere else. That's lost revenue, and we definitely don't want that, so that's a key thing to consider. And thankfully with this one, they don't actually have a fax line, so we don't have to mess with it.
The other thing here is all calls that are sitting in a queue are a simultaneous call. And just on the flip side with a call center, generally when we talk call centers, it's generally for receiving calls, but there are companies that do telemarketing. So they're a call center that are calling out, and they may have peak times of the year where they call out in major batches or have more staff in. So that's a consideration right at the beginning. So even a smallish business, not quite as big as this example that we've got there, if they're going to do some telemarketing at one point and they're going to have 5 extra staff in or that type of thing, that's going to zip up their simultaneous call requirement. So it's definitely a question to actually ask in the scoping of an opportunity and find out, for example, in a hotel, sometimes they do telemarketing at a certain time of year, which is usually winter, which is their off season. So just think about that because those are extra simultaneous calls. And as Matt said, if there's a crisis, something like that, all these calls suddenly coming into the queue, if your simultaneous call count is blowing out, they can't get in the queue, so they can't get hold of you, so they will start looking somewhere else. So it's really important that those customers are scoped correctly.
Slides are slowly moving. Any Faulty Towers fans will probably get a chuckle out of this one, but we have an example here of a hotel, and we've got our phone requirements there, which we've worked out, so we know we need 44, and then depending, we might need a portable or something like that for the kitchens. They have a fairly simple call flow. They have a main number and a main number for the owners, because they haven't got multiple staff that need to be called directly. We have a look at their hotel bill and break it down, and we can see what times a day are busy and how often calls are being made. So we can work out how many concurrent calls we need, and they have a fax, so we need an ATA. And of course, a big thing with the hotel is to take that simultaneous call count if you're working with 3CX, because if people are using wake-up calls, then that will take a simultaneous call count. And I know a lot of people that are listening probably think, who on earth uses a wake-up call these days? Tourists. Tourists use wake-up calls. They may have a language barrier or something like that, but they know how to understand simple things like, would you like a wake-up call? What time would you like it for? So really important to consider, especially with some of our more scenic places in New Zealand as well. basic warehouse here. So we're actually seeing a lot of warehouse adoption of 3CX, which is really cool. We've got a few phones out there now. We have the Wi-Fi portables, which are really cool. Back in the past, we had the DECT. DECT is a bit limited because it only has 11 channels and it can only be extended so far. Nice thing about our Grandstream Wi-Fi phones, other than being rock solid with their battery, because they can roam with only dropping a couple of RTP packets between Wi-Fi access points, so basically you don't notice, or an end user certainly wouldn't notice that the calls move between points. It's a really good fit for that as well. And the added benefit there is provided that the Wi-Fi network supports RTP traffic correctly, especially, and if it doesn't, then by all means put in some of our Grandstream access points because they certainly do. It's a really easy fit. You don't need radio extenders or anything like that. So we've got our basic warehouse here. Need a few phones for the yard, so we've got portables for that, and that's fine. We've got our basic call flow in there, and we know how it works, so we can work out our DDIs, work out our concurrent calls, and in the case here, I've got a 20% additional because they may be having a sale or something like that, so they're going to be getting more inbound calls, and of course, we want to be able to get those calls because more calls, more sales, more money. And they have a dreaded fax machine, so we need to put an ATA in there. So with the ATAs, we have the Grandstream series in there as well, and we can definitely help you guys out with those.
And just jumping in there with the portable Wi-Fi phones from Grandstream, we are seeing a huge uptake on those. In fact, I've just increased our minimum order levels and reorder levels on those. And Grandstream will be extending that range in the next 6 months as well. So there's going to be more portable Wi-Fi models in the range. We're pretty excited about the roadmap and the development that's happening around that because Grandstream see Wi-Fi is very important, particularly in the warehousing scenario that Matt's talking about here, but also in hotels. Hospitals, those types of scenarios, because they can move between the access points of Wi-Fi, whereas DECT, you've got to be within a certain range of your base stations. So, something to consider just based on where you're deploying those units.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And this last little consideration here, so I built this slide out when I was doing these updates because I was seeing a lot of these small partners. So we talk about 3CX a lot, and of course we love it, we use it, we advertise and train people to use it and install it. But that you do sometimes get those really small customers where it's just a couple of people that are in office. They're too small probably for a PBX system or something like that. So typically these are quite easy to cater to. What we see quite often is a Grandstream or a Yearlink in there, which is registering manually to something like a cloud system, maybe TuTalk Cloud or something like that. So too small for a PBX, just needs simple stuff, but it is still a sales opportunity for us because we can get those phones in there as well and have that recurring revenue monthly, which is the goal at the end of the day. So we've got a basic layout here for host hunters. So it's simple call flow. There's only a couple of staff, so we'll just do something like cloud registration. We don't need a PBX system. They don't do faxes because they're a small startup. And something key to consider here, a lot of people when they move over from legacy systems, typically they'll have an analog alarm wired in to that system as well. So that's definitely something to scope out ahead of time. If they're moving to a VoIP system, then they may need to get and of course their alarm company can assist with this, get a adapter or something like that to make it VoIP capable, or just leave that line in there. But definitely something to consider, because if you're shutting off someone's services and they have a monitored alarm set up on there and that goes down, they get broken into, then it's a bad time for everybody.
Absolutely, and most alarm companies today have little adapters. I know myself, just even in my own home, we changed away from a typical Spark telecom as it was in the day, analog system, went to a ultra fast broadband system, and we've just got a little adapter that adapts our home alarm for monitoring through there. The other thing is that even with these really small guys, If for whatever reason something like Two Talk Cloud's not going to work for you, that type of scenario, don't forget that the very basic standard edition of 3CX is free up to 8 simultaneous calls. So even though it's probably overkill for what the customer needs, there is that free option. And it also means from your support perspective, you're still supporting a system that you know inside out. So that is a key consideration with the 3CX standard 8 simultaneous call system.
Cool. And I think that's probably us for today. So email on the screen to reach out if you have any questions. Then feel free to send them through or ask them now. And of course, there's our New Zealand number. Big thing that SoftSol prides ourselves on, other than having knowledge around the actual brands that we sell, is somebody picks up the phone when you call us. So really important there. Someone will pick up the phone, or if you email our VoIP support at SoftSol, we have that 2-hour SLA, which Megan mentioned. I'm constantly monitoring that and making sure it is adhered to, because we want to make sure people get support in a timely fashion and are kept up to date with support requests as well.
Absolutely. Great job, Matt. So if you've got any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat now and we'll try to answer those straight away for you. Or as Matt said, you can email us at voip@softsol.co.nz or directly matt@softsol.co.nz or megan@softsol.co.nz. Happy to help. The purpose of today was to just start that process thinking about these deployment scenarios and the planning that needs to go into transitioning a customer from an analog system to a VoIP system. So absolutely, what am I thinking here? Training. In terms of 3CX training, Matt mentioned he's just come back from Palmerston North. We will be running an Auckland training in October, just prior to Labour weekend. I'm just getting the bookings open for that, hopefully in the next couple of days. And we'll be emailing everybody out around that. And we're also planning to run a November training down in Christchurch. So more details to follow on that. If you do have a requirement for 3CX technical training, feel free to reach out to me and let me know what you need, how many staff, where you're based. And we'll see if we can accommodate around that. We are actually in the midst of recording the basic training, and we're going to run that as a webinar with a live Q&A so that you still get Matt's expertise, but can run through that basic training fairly quickly. So that's coming as well. So have we got any questions flying in there, Matt?
No, not at the moment, but I just want to do an additional plug. So we have obviously social. So please follow us on social platforms and definitely check us out on YouTube. Do a couple, the odd video, and we can definitely offer these webinars because we record them, should you wish, and you can definitely reach out to us at the VoIP address to request that.
Absolutely. So hopefully you're all receiving our VoIP email that goes out once a month, which is solely focused on what's been happening in VoIP in the month or what's coming. Within that, there is a link to join a closed LinkedIn community, which is our Soft Solutions VoIP community, which I keep up to date regularly with new information. So things like the VoIP newsletter get posted up there, trainings that are coming up, any cool news that comes out of one of our key partners, such as 3CX or Grandstream. We're also always looking for case study opportunities. So if you've got a customer, doesn't matter how big or small they are, that is working with 3CX and one of the hardware providers, we're really keen to work with people to get some localized New Zealand case studies. If it's a larger opportunity, we often will get Yolmaz from 3CX involved in that opportunity as well, because 3CX themselves are always looking for case studies around the technology and the success stories, because that becomes a tool for both you and us and 3CX to all use around that. Same deal with Grandstream as well. So if you have those opportunities, reach out to me and I'll work out the best way forward. It is a painless experience for your customer. Generally just a little phone interview or filling out a survey, and then the marketing gurus go away and write those case studies and send back a proof, which can be tweaked as appropriate. So those are good opportunities to take advantage of.
Definitely. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you for staying awake. I know this has been a little bit longer than our typical bite-sized webinar updates. Probably going to come up with some sort of name for them, like Webibyte or something. I don't know. But again, thank you for joining us. Definitely subscribe to that VoIP update because we do run a couple of these a month. We're here to help you guys, and we do provide a lot of details as we see fit as well. Hopefully, we'll be looking at more detail in future for anyone, for any 3CX partners that are interested in the Call Flow Designer. Just need to give us a little bit of time to get up to skill because there's no official training for it just yet. So definitely stay tuned.
And just touching on that Call Flow Designer, there is a new series of videos that 3CX have just shared, and I'll be sharing that out on the closed group LinkedIn page shortly. And they look pretty exciting. The development they're doing around that Call Flow Designer is really good. Matt was out of the office last week, so I'm giving him a few days so that he can actually catch up on what's happened while he's been away. But they're starting to come out with a lot more documentation around that. And that just points to this whole webinar that we've just run on that planning stage is so important. And using the tools like the Call Flow Designer will assist in that deployment in the long term with 3CX.
Definitely. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Again, stay tuned for the next one and we'll see you then.
Great. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.